Hello, hello. These adorable cats and I are here to talk to you about the basics of working out. Even if you have a little bit of experience with exercise before, I just want to double check that you have the information that you need to be sure that you're doing this as well as you can to take care of yourself and be awesome. So let's get into it. Especially since most of the people that I work with have some type of chronic pain, meaning that they have pain that's been hanging out for quite a while, whether that's because of an injury, like maybe a knee, a hip, or a back, or if it's because of something autoimmune related, fibromyalgia, long COVID, something like that. One of the recurring themes that we're going to be coming up with when we're working out is we're not looking at pain as good or bad, or a reason to panic, or a reason to stop. We're looking at it as information that we can use to figure out whether or not what we're doing is helping or hurting, or if we need to change our approach. So sensation is just information. Yes, it rhymes, but it also works out kind of well that it does because it's true. Sensation is not good or bad. It's just information, again, that we can use to decide whether or not something is working or not. So pain and discomfort is actually a necessary thing to feel because it's your body telling you like, hey, this isn't working for me. So you might need to adjust how you're doing this. So this is where you need to kind of have the time in your workout so you can pay attention to what the heck is going on so that you can notice it, you can be curious about it. And instead of like panicking and shutting down, being like, I can't move at all, you think like, okay, what can I do from here? So as an example, you might notice that you have some knee pain while doing squats. That's a pretty common one. That is also a very common thing that we can fix. So that would be a great time to leave me a comment in your workout and say, hey, I felt this thing. It was about this much. It was about here. What should I do? And then I can help you troubleshoot that. That's also a time to see maybe if you know well enough what you should be doing, maybe you can rearrange where your feet are in the squat, see if it helps. These are all of these things we're going to be practicing. And when you're a little bit newer, it's hard to remember that you are practicing skills that you aren't used to and that you don't have. So if you haven't spent a lot of time doing squats before, especially if you tend to have pain that keeps you from moving around, you're going to need a little bit of extra time to kind of fiddle around and see what works and make sure that you're learning everything as best as you can. To that effect, every single time your program changes, which will be about every 4 to 6 weeks, you want to take what's called a deload week, meaning it's just an easier week where you're not trying to be super intense. You're not trying to do the hardest workout you've ever done. You're at maybe like 50, 60% effort, if percentages are your thing, where you're just focusing on learning the movements of your new program. So we're going to spend a lot of time like repeating a lot of the same movements over and over, but especially at the beginning, there's going to be some newer stuff and there might always be new things to find out. So that first week of the program that it changes, you're going to dial back, do less intense exercise than you did before so you can make sure that you have the form dialed. But having the form perfect is really going to help you in the long term, way more than just pushing like crazy right out of the gate. Because we're going to be using a technique called progressive overload, which is awesome. I am all about progressive overload. So think about that as a staircase. Like instead, if your starting position is down here at the bottom and we're trying to climb all the way to the top of a long staircase, you probably can't make the step, make it to the top of that staircase in one giant step from the bottom to the top, right? How do you do it? You climb one single step at a time until, hooray, get there. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So that is the goal. And that's basically what progressive overload is you're starting at a relatively low intensity. It's manageable so that you can focus on your form. And then once that form feels good and you start feeling like it's a little bit easier, then you make it a little bit harder. Maybe that means you add 5 pounds or you do a few more reps, you add a band. I don't know. There's many different ways that we can make things harder, and we'll get into it a little bit more as you progress through the program. But you make that a little bit harder on the next week. And then maybe the week after that, you feel good. You're like, okay, I can push this a little bit more. I'm feeling a little bit more confident. I'm going to go up another 5 pounds, maybe another 10. And then the week after that, you're going to progressively improve your ability to do what you're able to do and to increase the amount that you can do over time. As we have all at one point been the person who hasn't worked out in a while. And then we go and we work out and we do so many things that we can barely lift our arms the next day. The idea of going up the staircase makes us want to cry. And we're so sore and it feels so awful that everything sucks. And then we don't do anything for another several weeks to several months to maybe several years, depending on your experience. And then we start all over again. And that sucks because we can't get anywhere doing that. So we're going to start with that lower intensity and then build from there. And this also will change sometimes when things are stressful, because sometimes you'll have like a stuff going on in your life that means that you have less time and ability and mental space to do workouts. So this could be like if you're moving or you have a crazy project going on at work. The idea is not to just like to quit everything. And the idea is also not to just push through and do everything until you're so stressed out and you can't deal and then you injure yourself. Both of those extremes are not good. Where we want to live is in the middle, where we have a structure, an idea of where we want to be, and we try and hit that as much as possible. But when we have less to give, we do a little bit less and we let that be okay. So maybe you normally do 3 workouts, but then you moved over the weekend. So maybe you could only do 1 or 2 because everything was crazy. That's fine. You still got a workout in. Maybe instead of doing a workout, if you don't have time for that, maybe you have time for doing like some stretching or just a warm up or some very basic exercise. The idea here is we're starting to build some flexibility into how we do our workouts and how we approach exercise, because when we get very all or nothing, that means that as soon as there's a roadblock that comes up that keeps us from doing the thing perfectly, then we stop doing it at all. And that is a recipe for never improving, which is obviously not the goal because we like to improve. And then when it comes to exercise, exercise variations specifically, so variations, also called modifications, are going to be your best friend. So let's dive in and talk about that more specifically. So very often people will have an idea in their head of that they can't do a modification. If I modify an exercise, I'm not doing it right, and that sucks, and that means I'm a loser of this. But that is not the thing, because the point of an exercise is not to do the exercise as stated. It is to do the best variation of the exercise that actually works for you. So push-ups are always a good example, because people will always say, I can't do girl push-ups, which are little push-ups with knees on the ground, because they're push-ups that, like those are lame push-ups. I can't do them. However, there is no such thing as girl push-ups, because there's only modifications. If you modify push-ups where you put your knees on the ground, or maybe you elevate your hands up, and that means you can actually do a good push-up with good form and feel the muscles working that you need to feel, and that is the goal of the exercise. The goal of the exercise is not to fight for your life doing the world's worst push-ups, but by God, technically your knees are off the ground, so you're so much cooler. I would much rather, hopefully you can see me, I would much rather see a push-up that looks really nice and pretty with your knees on the ground than this weird fighting for your life, like quarter rep, like that kind of solitude. Because that's not cool, for one thing, if you care about that sort of thing. But in all seriousness, that's not really working the exercises that we want to work. If you're fighting for your life, trying to get out of the bottom of a push-up, then we need a different variation of a push-up. Or if you're only able to bend your arms just a tiny bit, then we need a different variation of a push-up. So I build this into your workouts as much as possible, but there might be some times where you do need different variations, and you might, and so you want to look out for this stuff. So some indications that you might need a different variation of an exercise is if it feels way too hard, you feel like you're just going to die and you can't understand the form, and you're like, what the hell is she talking about? How do I do this thing? Let's try a different variation. See if a different one works better for you that is a little bit more accessible. Then on the other end of the world, if you are just hanging out, you are cruising, staying with a push-up example, you're doing just 20 push-ups and they're beautiful and transcendent and wonderful, and you're not even trying and you're just like glossy and having a great time, then you need a different variation, because you need a harder variation. Variations can be easier, but they can also be harder. And if you aren't able to keep good form, that would be another time that we need a different variation, because form is going to be the priority of all of the things that we do. We're trying to always have really good form, because that is how we build strength. We build strength on top of good form. If we have crappy form and we try and build strength on top of crappy form, that's a good way to get hurt. And I'm not about you getting hurt. That sucks. Another reason you might need a different variation is if you just don't have the right equipment. Maybe you're used to doing a variation of a squat where you have a bar on your back, but now you don't have that equipment because you're out traveling or something. So we can do a different variation of a squat using different stuff to make it harder so that you're still getting the same benefit of the exercise, even if you don't have the equipment that you're used to. Another time you might need a different variation is if something hurts or feels weird and you just can't modify your way out of it, and you're trying really hard and you think your form is, well, you check your form and your form is good and you're, I don't know, you've done everything you can think of, but there's still like something painful or weird. That might be doing squats and you've tried moving around your feet, you tried doing all these things with your squats, and your knees still hurt. Then that might be a time where we do a different variation. Maybe we do wall sits, or we do squats with an exercise ball against the wall. All the different things. There are so many options. And this is not something that I am expecting you to do or to know. I am expecting you to ask me so that I can help you to figure this out. When you're not working with me in person, the more you can communicate with me, the better, because I can't help you if I don't know that you're having a problem. So if you do notice, especially during your workouts, if you notice like, hey, this feels weird and I'm just not super sure if I'm doing it right, take a video and send it to me. Leave a comment and send it to me. Keep in touch with me and talk to me as much as you possibly can, because I will never see it as annoying. I will only ever be grateful that you are making my job easier so that I can keep you safe and get you stronger and have you not hurting yourself on the way, because we don't ever want to hurt ourselves. So hopefully that was helpful, shed a little bit of light on the subject. So as ever, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know. Stay in touch with me, and I will talk to you soon.